Hey guys, welcome back to Altaz-Review, where we talk about different games and opinions. Many of the games releasing this year haven't really kept up with our expectations, and that got me thinking of the unique games we saw in previous years. Specifically, after seeing the lackluster performance of the Lord of the Rings games, like the Mines of Moria and Gollum, I remember playing the Shadow of Mordor series and how cleverly they used the Lord of the Rings IP and its lore. So let's look at the Shadow of Mordor and how it used the various details from the movies and books in their beautiful recreation of Middle-earth. The Shadow of Mordor is set far before we get to the story of Bilbo or Frodo. Talion is a human that guards the Black Gate, and the Black Gate is attacked by followers of Sauron who seek to revive the Dark Lord. The setting takes advantage of the long history of Middle-earth and shows us events that may or may not have happened, but they work as a headcanon. We are told of Celebrimbor, the Smith of the One Ring, and all the other rings under its influence. And once we're introduced to so many new characters and interesting relationships, all those characters and relationships are immediately snatched away from us, and our main character, Talion, is attacked, losing his family, and left at death's door. He meets the spirit of Celebrimbor, the Smith, who inhabits him to keep him alive. The story continues to unfold as they have a common enemy in the Dark Lord, and fight their way through the orc armies to eventually challenge Sauron's forces. The Shadow of Mordor uses several key locations and characters to grab the attention of Lord of the Rings fans, while creating an interesting dynamic between Talion and Celebrimbor that translates into the story and into gameplay. Talion is a skilled fighter, and he's also good at subterfuge since he's a trained ranger from the Black Gate, while Celebrimbor shows off his advanced elf magic with his spectral bow and his ability to brand enemies and manipulate their minds. All the enemies and creatures make for good combat encounters while also serving as Easter eggs, where we get to experience Middle-earth from a third-person perspective. The combat was also very immersive and allowed the player to invest in skills in a way that benefits certain tactics or takes advantage of certain gameplay elements. You can essentially create a build that suits your playstyle, but good combat is simply an expectation from a game made by WB, as seen in the Arkham series. Then we get to the Nemesis System. The Nemesis System used in this game is well known for being one of the most in-depth AI structures in gaming. Every orc has a specific rank or personality in their army, and depending on who you defeat, their ranks will be replaced by the next in line or by a rival orc or Uruk-hai. But the interesting thing is that orc leaders can also fight each other in small skirmishes or even ambush each other to gain more control and fame within the orc ranks. You're also able to manipulate the power balance by allowing orcs to stay in power or by killing certain orcs or defeating them however you like. You can also use Celebrimbor's powers to brand the orcs and take over their minds, and thus have a powerful spy deep within the orcish army. And depending on how good you are at fighting, you can either manipulate smaller orcs and help them defeat the stronger ones, or straight up fight one of the strongest orcs in the army and take over their mind. It's entirely possible to control the entire orc army, but lesser orcs will still try to overthrow their leaders, as is their way. You end up having a lot of choices in how the power balance will continue to change, and you're always worried about which orcs are in power and what kind of little battles are happening between them. So sometimes more than the story, you're worried about the power balance between orcs, and that's so interesting because you're always worried about what's going on in the world, and it doesn't really feel like NPCs are reacting. It feels like all your enemies and companions are fighting with some intelligence. True to its name, the Nemesis System can also make a true nemesis out of orcs. Orcs can either return with an injury from how you killed them, or after they ran away from defeat. Some orcs may also try to take revenge for the death of another orc. In either case, these orcs will be stronger, but then they'll have new weaknesses and strengths based on their history. The worst enemies are the ones that end up killing you, as they will gain higher ranks in the army and receive a title related to how they defeated you. Maybe something like Shade Slayer or Ranger Killer. They'll keep mentioning it too the next time you fight them. It hurts our ego more than our playthrough. Although it had its flaws in terms of lore, it was a brilliant game with all the staples of WB, and it provided a different perspective of Middle-earth and of many prominent characters. I'd say that the Shadow of Mordor did something for Lord of the Rings in a way similar to what Jedi: The Fallen Order did for Star Wars. It's a good use of a beloved IP that can be used further without impeding on the existing lore. And this is a good example of how these franchises are being treated today. Jedi Fallen Order sparked a series that rivals the best games of recent years and may even get new sequels in the future. Star Wars as a whole has games that keep our expectations up and use the world of Star Wars to help us experience its best moments. In contrast, games like Gollum and the Mines of Moria have used a single idea: which may seem innovative at first, but they don't match that idea with the quality required to truly respect the franchise. It seems they use their interesting ideas as unsuccessful cash cows rather than as a base for expanding the lore and helping players experience different parts of the Middle-earth fantasy. I think Lord of the Rings needs a more faithful and now a more bold step towards embracing the world of Middle-earth. The Shadow of Mordor series was one of the best iterations of Lord of the Ring games in recent years and maybe even ever, and it definitely deserves another game with the same systems. And since it's been so long, it wouldn't be a bad idea to create a spiritual successor to Shadow of Mordor by using the same gameplay elements but with a new story, new characters, and modern day graphics with current gen technology. Lord of the Rings still has a lot of potential, especially since there's so much lore in the books by J.R.R. Tolkien that haven't been recreated on TV or in any other media. The Nemesis system is waiting to be back out in action, whether it uses orcs again or if it's expanded to work with all kinds of enemies, and maybe even with allies as well. I hope we see Lord of the Rings reach its true potential in future games, and to get the respect it deserves rather than seeing more lackluster titles which have no effort. The most important thing is that the next studio in charge of a Lord of the Rings game should focus on lore and using their characters and locations with great consideration, since it's the little details that really stand out in Lord of the Rings. But let me know what you guys think and what other games you'd like to hear about. I hope I see you in the next video.